Chances are you've heard his words at a wedding or maybe seen them on a poster, but the story behind the man, Kahlil Gibran, it's one of the most surprising in all of literary history. So today, we're going to dive into his incredible and honestly pretty unexpected legacy.
I mean, you've almost certainly run into his words somewhere, right? Maybe on a poster, or quoted in wedding vows, or, like this Reddit user did, even framed and hanging in a baby's nursery. It's wild how his writing can feel so ancient and, at the same time, super personal.
Okay, but here's the part that's truly mind-blowing. Kahlil Gibran is the third best-selling poet of all time. Of all time. He's right up there behind only Shakespeare and Lao Tzu. I mean, just think about that company for a second. That's absolutely legendary.
So, that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? How did a poor immigrant from Ottoman Lebanon become this global spiritual phenomenon? A guy whose work has literally never gone out of print. Well, let's start with the book that kicked it all off.
You see, his story doesn't start with some big explosion of fame. It's more of a slow, steady burn, and it's all centered around one small but incredibly powerful book that first came out way back in 1923.
So when The Prophet was first published, critics were, well, they weren't exactly fans. They were pretty cool on it. But readers, they felt something totally different. It became this word-of-mouth sensation that has, and I mean this, never gone out of print. Then in the 1960s, its popularity just exploded with the counterculture. I mean, its message of universal love, of spiritual freedom that wasn't tied to any organized religion, that was exactly what that generation was looking for. And its influence just kept going, quietly humming along for a century, getting translated into over 100 languages. It even inspired that animated film produced by Salma Hayek a few years back.
Okay, so to really get why this book connects so deeply with people, you've got to understand the man behind it. His journey was it was one of immense struggle and constant reinvention.
Gibran was born into a poor family in what's now Lebanon. They immigrated to Boston, trying to escape that poverty and find a better life. But just as he was starting to find his footing as a young artist, tragedy just wiped his family out. It was devastatingly fast. In the span of just a few months, he lost his sister, his half-brother, and his mother. That kind of profound loss, well, it became a central, powerful current that runs through everything he ever wrote.
And honestly, his career as an artist could have just ended right there, completely crushed by grief. But there was one person, Mary Haskell. She was a school headmistress, a bit older than him, and she saw his genius. She became his financial backer, his editor, his closest friend. Now, their relationship was complicated, for sure. But her belief in him, that was the absolute foundation for everything he would go on to create.
But Gibran wasn't just some lone mystic working in an attic somewhere. No, he was right at the heart of a revolutionary literary movement. And they had a mission, a really bold one, to completely transform an entire culture's literature.
Yeah, he was a leading figure in what's known as the Mahar. That's basically the literary movement of the Arab diaspora. We're talking about a group of writers who had moved to the Americas, and they all kind of felt that Arabic literature was, well, stuck, stagnant, just repeating the past. And they were absolutely determined to breathe some new life into it.
And they didn't just talk about it, they got organized. Gibran became the chairman of this group in New York called the Pen League. And their goal? Wow. It was, in their own words, to lift Arabic literature from the quagmire of stagnation. They wanted to stop copying the old, rigid classical forms and start writing about the raw, messy, universal human spirit. You got to understand, for that time, this was a totally radical idea.
So, just how radical was Gibran himself? Well, get this. One of his early Arabic novels, a book called Spirits Rebellious, was so critical of authority, both religious and political, that it was publicly burned in a marketplace in Beirut. I mean, they literally set his words on fire. His ideas were seen as that dangerous. Okay, so let's recap. We've got this artist who's shaped by immense tragedy, and he's also leading this literary revolution. So, what was the secret sauce? What was the ingredient in his writing that made it connect not just with the Arab world, but with the entire globe? Well, his genius was really in how he blended things together. He was like a bridge between two different worlds. On one hand, you have his Eastern roots, Sufi mysticism, his Maronite Christian upbringing, but then he masterfully wove that together with the Western philosophy and art he was soaking up in Boston and Paris. We're talking about thinkers like Nietzsche and Walt Whitman, and artists like William Blake. He basically took the comforting, wise style of Eastern spiritual writing and fused it with Western romantic ideas about the individual.
and what came out was something that felt both ancient and brand new at the same time.
He had a really deep personal connection with the English poet and artist William Blake. In fact, Gibran called Blake the God-man. He saw Blake's work as more than just art. For him, it was a direct line to the divine. And that fusion, that mix of spirituality and art, that really became Gibran's signature.
So this unique blend of East and West, it created a legacy that just rippled out in ways he probably could have never even imagined. It ended up touching politics, music, you name it, even pop culture.
His reach was just incredible. I mean, think about this. That famous line from JFK's inaugural address, "Ask not what your country can do for you." Yeah, it sounds a lot like an essay Gibran wrote years before. John Lennon actually adapted one of his lines for the Beatles song Julia. Elvis Presley? He cherished his personal copy of The Prophet for the rest of his life. Even David Bowie gave him a nod in his music. His words just became part of the cultural fabric.
But you know, for all the famous people who admired him, his real, lasting legacy is much more personal than that. It's found in those quiet moments when his words just connect directly with someone's life. Like this Redditor sharing their favorite quote. Just a simple, powerful thought on what it truly means to give.
And that really brings us right back to where we started, in a world that is constantly changing, faster and faster. Why? Why does this one small book, written by an immigrant who went through so much pain, continue to speak so powerfully to us about the biggest things there are: life, love, and loss?
You know, maybe the answer is right there in the epitaph he chose for himself. It's carved on his tomb in Lebanon today. It's this promise of presence, this idea that the human spirit and its voice can reach out beyond even death. It's a haunting, beautiful final message from the prophet of the people.